What's going on, guys? Jake Peffer here, and welcome back to Jake's Cinema Room. With the release of Jeepers Creepers Reborn coming out next Friday, I've decided to go back and take a look at the first three movies in the Jeepers Creepers franchise. I already did the first one, so today I'm going to be looking at Jeepers Creepers Part 2. Like I said in my first Jeepers Creepers review, this will have some spoilers, so if you have not seen the movie, you may want to go check it out before listening to the review. If you don't really care, then please listen on. Also, I am not going to discuss any of the criminal past of director/writer Victor Salva. So don't be expecting me to touch on any of that. Just going to be talking about the movie and giving you guys my 2 cents on it. So yeah, here we go. This movie came out back in 2003, so 2 years after the first movie. This one, we actually start off getting a little bit more backstory on the creeper himself. The movie starts out with some verbiage that says every 23rd spring for 23 days, it eats. So we learn that the creeper comes out every 23 years in the springtime, and for 23 days, he gets to eat and feast on whatever he wants, essentially. And then he goes into, I'm assuming, a kind of hibernation for another 23 years until he comes back out and is hungry enough to eat some more. So just adding a little bit more layers to his overall persona and everything. This movie starts out with probably the best sequence in the entire franchise, at least for me, which is the cornfield scene. Your kind of central character of this movie, outside of the creeper, is Ray Wise, who has a farm and with his 2 sons. And in the opening sequence, his youngest son gets taken by the creeper. It's a very eerie scene because he's out on the farm in the cornfield adjusting all their scarecrows, one of which just happens to be the creeper. And it's a pretty frightening scene where he ends up taking the boy, and then Ray Wise's character and his older son run after him and try to save the boy before he eventually just gets taken by the creeper. Very awesome scene, great imagery. It has a nice look to it because you're out in that cornfield, and there's definitely a filter on the camera that's making everything kind of yellowish orange, and it's an interesting tint to put on it. But like I said, without a doubt, probably my favorite sequence in the entire franchise, and it sets up the movie to be better than it actually is, because unfortunately everything after this isn't quite as good. But nonetheless, this second entry in the Jeepers Creepers franchise isn't bad necessarily. I actually find it a little more entertaining than the first one, but I don't think it's quite as well made as the first one. Because this one, unfortunately, you have so many characters, because in this one, the creeper stops a school bus with a high school basketball team that's on their way back from winning a championship. And he basically tries to feed on the entire basketball team, along with their coaches and bus driver. And just that alone, you're getting so much more in this movie. The stakes are raised because you have so many more characters. Where in that first movie, you're basically just dealing with 2 characters for the majority of the runtime. And in this one, you're giving us 15 to 20 characters, some of which don't even really have lines or names or anything. They're kind of background characters for the most part. But you get a lot of information on the majority of these kids. And unfortunately, most of them, pretty much all of them, just aren't all that interesting. You got a cast here of essentially nobodies. Most of them you've probably seen pop up in some other things here and there, from TV shows to other movies and whatnot. But unfortunately, none of them are really all that memorable. You got maybe 2 in the group that are somewhat decent for the most part. But all in all, you're overloading yourself with so many characters this time around that you kind of drop the ball on giving any redeemability to a lot of them. Because in this one, more so than the first one, you just have a lot of characters screaming at each other as loud as they can. And it's hard to tell who you really want to root for out of this group, because they're all not very redeemable and don't have all that many good qualities to them, to the point where it's like, all right, let's just see who gets picked off next. Realistically, this would have probably been better if it focused a little bit more on Ray Wise and his storyline, because his storyline is definitely more enthralling. You know, you have him wanting to get revenge on the Creeper for taking his youngest son, and he ends up hearing over the radio that these kids are stuck in this bus out on the highway. So him and his older son decide to go out and try to help them out while simultaneously stopping the Creeper from hurting any more people. And it all boils down to eventually they are essentially able to capture him because it gets to the point where this is the last day of his 23 days where he's allowed to eat, and he goes into hibernation mode at the end of the movie, and then Ray Wise's character ends up capturing him, and then we jump 23 years later to where he's waiting for him to awaken again so he can kill him again, I guess. Not a whole lot of clarification there. It seems like he would have been better off just killing the Creeper, you know, in real time when we first see him. You know, he stabs him so many times. He doesn't necessarily die. He goes into hibernation, but it almost seems like maybe set him on fire, chop his head off, like put a bomb on him, make him explode. So many things you could have done to where you didn't necessarily have to capture him and then wait a whole nother 23 years to eventually kill him again. Didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but you know, whatever they want to do. At one point in this movie, there is about half the school bus team just runs off, and you don't ever see what happens to any of those characters. There's also a few other characters that are somewhat notable in the cast and actually have a lot of lines and character names, and their fates don't really ever get explored. We just kind of see them crash in a truck or jump out of a truck, and then they're never seen again. So not a whole lot of clarity on what happens to a lot of the characters in this movie, which is a little disappointing. Even though most of these characters are annoying, it's still like, hey, you're introducing a lot of these people and you want me to care about them, but you're not even going to tell me what happens to them in the end. That seems like a very odd choice, but you know, whatever you want to do, I guess. You have Justin Long coming back in a small cameo as his character Derry. He's showing up in basically visions that one of the girls on the bus is seeing, and she kind of starts to learn a little bit of the lore and mystery about the Creeper, and she starts telling the rest of the team, you know, essentially what he's doing, which sets up a part in the movie where he kind of sniffs out the squad and picks out the people that he wants to get something from, and that's one of the more humorous parts of the movie. This one definitely has a little bit more humor to it than the first one. Some of it intentional, some of it unintentional, but it at least makes for some humorous laughs every once in a while. And that's where I would add to this one being a little bit more entertaining than that first one. Where the first one I think is definitely better made overall. This one has a lot more scenes where you can kind of just laugh along with it because it's so ridiculous. And it gets to the point where it's like, all right, let's just start killing these kids and get out of the way, man. Let's get it going, because it's definitely a slow build up. You get that first initial kill in the beginning where he takes the young son, and then he basically disposes of the two coaches and the bus driver. And after that, it's a good while before he really offs any of these high schoolers on the bus. So it would have been nice to get that moving along a little bit more, but you know, it is what it is. I do like the look of the Creeper in this one more than the first one. He's really wet. His skin and everything is a lot more moist than the first one, where the first one he just looks like, you know, he just looks like he does. This one, I like that kind of wet look that he has. It's almost more intense and terrifying, and just adds a little bit more to his character. And you have Jonathan Brett coming back as the Creeper once again, and he's doing a great job, just like he did in the first one. He's a great physical actor, and even though he's under all these prosthetics and under all this makeup, he's still given arguably the best performance in the movie. Because like I said, pretty much all these kids that are on this bus, none of them are really all that memorable. Ray Wise, he's doing what he can with the material, and like I said, his story probably would have been a little bit more compelling to follow, more so than the basketball team. But in the end, it all accumulates into what I would still say is a pretty entertaining movie for the most part. It definitely has its faults, and it's got its moments here and there, but all in all, it's entertaining enough to where I would say it's worth a watch. Just expect it to be a bit of a step down from that first movie. Overall, I would probably rate it probably about a 5 out of 10. It's solid enough, but if you saw that first movie, liked it, you may still like this one overall, but it's definitely a step down in quality from that first movie. But yeah, if you guys have seen Jeepers Creepers 2, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Be sure to be on the lookout for my Jeepers Creepers 3 review coming in the next few days. And be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll leave all my links in the description below on where to follow me and whatnot. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you all later.